Melissa, you want to take a roll call for us to establish our quorum?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Regional Council. I'll call your name. Please unmute and indicate if you're present for the record. Mayor Barney.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Bienwellner.
Here.
Thank you. President Burnett. Mayor Carlett.
I'm here.
Thank you. Mayor Dickey.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Gallego. Mayor Giles.
Present.
Thank you. Supervisor Goodman. Mayor Hall. Mayor Hartkey. President Javier. Mayor Hermosillo.
Present.
Thank you. Supervisor Hickman. Mayor Levault.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Governor Lewis. Mayor Lord.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Molina.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Osborne.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Ortega.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Pereira.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Bridget Peterson.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Les Peterson.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Price.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Riggs.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Rodriguez.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Schoaf.
Present.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Smith.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Walter. Mayor Weiss.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Wilson.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Woods. And our chairman is present. Is there anyone that I missed?
Mayor Hartkey just came on.
Thank you, Mayor
President
Hartkey.
Burnett,
Thank you,
did you hear me? I had to go out and get back in.
Yes, thank you very much, President Burnett. So we do have a
Okay.
quorum.
I'll go mute it.
Thank you, Mayor Gallego. A quorum is present.
All right, looks like we got a large quorum. This is good. Okay, were there any cards submitted for call to the audience?
No, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, there was no public comment received for the call to the audience item or any other item on the agenda.
Perfect. Okay, so we're going to skip on to 3 executive directors report. Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Regional Council. Just a few items that hopefully be of interest to you today. Go to the next slide. So this country, we've seen a lot of unrest across the country, and the latest round. Hard to say what the latest round has been, but some of the hate for the Asian American community in the United States. As you know, we have a very diversified workforce at MAG. Of our 120 or so employees, about 20% are from other countries with a large presence from the Asian Americans. So we posted this statement on our website, just a very important statement in terms of statement against racial violence, in particular the recent injustices inflicted on Asian American in the United States. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. Go to the next slide. Last month on March 26th, MAG, in conjunction with the mega region Arizona mega region, which is the mega region between Arizona and Sonora, hosted our annual webinar. Typically, these meetings are held as part of the Arizona League conference. This year, because of the pandemic and a number of other issues, we had a virtual webinar on March 26th, and a very good participation in both MAG member agencies as well as many of the jurisdictions in Sonora too. I'm sad to say that Mr. Siscomani, there, the picture on the right-hand side, lost his life in a plane accident the day after the webinar. He was very instrumental in helping us arrange this webinar as well as develop the agenda. So it was really a blow to our staff who had worked closely with him in setting up this webinar, and has been a good friend of Arizona over the years too. So we're really saddened by that. We'll go to the next slide. Just to bring to your attention, as you know, we've been doing a lot of work under our Age Friendly Arizona banner as part of the older Arizona transportation incubator. A number of resources have been posted now that will hopefully improve the mobility of our older adults in Arizona. So just some resources there. There's a toolkit out there with a video that I think you'll find interesting also. There's also a free national webinar on March 27th that will feature our work on this important project. So thank you, Mr. Chair. Be happy to answer any questions from the committee. Thank you.
Any questions from our council? Okay, hearing none. Can we get approval of the consent agenda? Next item is items 4A through 4F or on the consent agenda. Any member regional council have any questions or request of presentation of any of these items?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Kathy
And
Carter.
I'll second, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I have a motion from Mayor Carlott, a second from Mayor Weiss. Any discussion? Hearing none. Melissa, can you take a vote, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I'll call your name. Please unmute and indicate how you vote on the motion. Mayor Barney?
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Van-Wilner?
Aye.
Thank you. President Burnett?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Carlett?
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Dickey?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Gallego?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Giles?
Aye.
Thank you. Supervisor Goodman? Mayor Hall? Mayor Hartke?
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Hermosillo?
Yes.
Thank you. Supervisor Hickman? Mayor Levault?
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Lord?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Molina? Mayor
Aye.
Osborne? Oh, thank you, Mayor Molina. Mayor Osborne?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Ortega?
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Pereira? Mayor
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Pereira. Mayor Bridget Peterson?
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Les Peterson? Mayor Price?
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Riggs?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Rodriguez?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Schoaf?
Aye.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Smith?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Weiss?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Wilson?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Woods?
Aye.
And Chairman Wires?
I vote aye.
Thank you. Is there anyone that I missed?
This is Les Peterson. I vote yes.
Thank you, Mayor Peterson. And the consent agenda carries unanimously.
Perfect. Okay, moving on. Item number 5, funding for homeless initiatives. Executive Director Amy St. Peter will begin the update. And she's also going to be joined by Sapna Gupta from MAG and Joanne Carr from the Arizona Housing Coalition. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the council. We appreciate this opportunity to provide you with an update in terms of the regional homeless planning efforts that are underway right now. We'd like to thank you in particular for your partnership as well as your patience as we've conducted extensive outreach and research in order to inform these efforts. We'll be offering the highlights of some of that analysis today with a particular focus on funding as requested at last month's council meeting. And as we move forward then with this presentation, we do want to note that during the MAG Management Committee meeting this month, there's really good discussion about this topic as well. Really good insights in terms of the funding that could be needed. And in particular, we received a request to develop regional funding targets and regional funding scenarios that we'll be offering for your information next month as we provide the regional strategy portfolio for action. That work is underway right now, and we're eager to share the results with you very soon. In terms of this meeting today, though, 3 of the most important messages to share are these. One is that we need to offer a full range of solutions that all communities can consider for implementation throughout the entire region. It's critically important to expand the geographic footprint of homeless assistance programs, but to offer a range of different options for doing just that. Two, we understand that we urgently need to move to action. And so we appreciate your support in that and ask for your continued partnership in being able to move to action with these strategies. And then three, all of these strategies will require some level of funding. So we're very committed to supporting this conversation and to being able to offer some options for that moving forward, and particularly being able to offer that through the introduction of the regional funding targets and the funding scenarios that will be offered next month. So as you listen to these presentations today, we do ask that you consider what funding your community might be able to contribute to support these regional efforts. If we can coordinate our investments, we can maximize the impact that we have on reducing the numbers of people who are experiencing homelessness right now in our region. This conversation was started last month, and today we hope to continue this dialogue with you. And then that conversation will continue into next month as well as we start to pivot to implementation. Next slide, please. So this is a general timeline that we've been working within since last fall. So in just a few short months, we've completed a tremendous amount of research and outreach. We've completed 5 different studies that are helping us to better understand the local and national best practices when it comes to addressing homelessness, as well as the funding needed to support those practices, and then the siting considerations that need to be taken into account when implementing these programs in different communities. We've also conducted outreach with more than 1,000, almost 1,500 people then, and being able to incorporate their diverse perspectives in this work has been critically important to make sure that the work that we're doing is relevant to a number of different people throughout the entire region. And so now we're in the position of offering these regional strategies. We'll preview those with you today and then offer those formally for your action next month. With this research and outreach complete, we are ready now to pivot to action with your assistance. Next slide, please. And we're grateful for the assistance that you've been contributing to these very important efforts, particularly through the ongoing communication, so that we can make sure that we're aligning these regional efforts with your local priorities in a way that really meets your needs very, very specifically. We'd in particular like to thank your Human Services directors. They've provided critical support throughout this process, as well as to others on your staff, as we've looked at different opportunities then that the region has to take action. Next slide, please. All of this feedback then has provided a few different key priorities that you see in front of you on your screen. We are using this feedback, and in particular, these particular areas then, in terms of fine-tuning those strategies and developing the tactical steps that we can take in implementation. We are meeting on a weekly basis with subject matter experts as well as your staff to make sure that we're putting the best tactics in place within that portfolio. Next slide, please. And so today we're eager to offer these strategies to you and welcome any feedback that you might have throughout this process. Next slide, please. The 14 strategies then that have been prioritized for immediate implementation upon your approval have been organized into these 5 categories. We've been developing those tactics with assistance from stakeholders in the community as we prepare to offer a range of solutions then throughout the entire region. Next slide, please. And these are those 14 different strategies, and they cover a number of different areas, and we're really looking to, can we be as specific as possible about the actions that we need to take as a region while we continue to leverage and support existing efforts that are already underway. We want to make sure that we're integrating efforts and that we're taking them to the next level, particularly being able to work together regionally. Next slide, please. So in terms of our next steps, this is where we are. We want to thank you for your participation with the elected official forum earlier this month. That provided great insights in terms of where we need to go and be as a region. We are right now working very closely with partners to develop a cost analysis of the projected number of shelter beds and housing units that will be needed in this region in order to accommodate the current crisis. We're also developing a cost analysis then for the other strategies that are included in that regional portfolio. We'll be taking the results of that cost analysis and developing regional funding targets, and we'll be developing some scenarios around that utilizing in part the expertise of applied economics, who worked with us on the municipal expenditure study, which you'll hear about in just a moment. So we're really combining the best talents of people with expertise in homelessness, human services, as well as financial planning to be able to present you the best information next month with those highlights. We will be offering that portfolio for you for action next month, along with the regional the regional funding targets and the regional funding scenarios for your information next month. Then we'll be pivoting directly into implementation with a capstone event on June 10th. We do hope that you'll be able to join us as we launch the efforts then to develop the implementation plan. So we'll have a much better understanding of exactly who's doing what by when and where, which is a critical question in all of this work then, and being able to offer you an implementation plan for approval in August. Next slide, please. So again, I do want to thank you for your time, the time that you've already invested in these efforts, as well as a partnership that we hope to continue with you as we pivot then to action, particularly with implementation. At this point now, if we can go to the next slide. And I'd like to offer the floor to Sapna Gupta. She is a planner with our policy team here at MAG, and she's providing great leadership and expertise with this work, particularly as it pertains to the municipal expenditures, and working very closely with you to better understand the level of investment that's being made right now to address housing and homelessness. Sapna, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Regional Council for the opportunity to present the initial findings from the study, which was developed with Sarah Murley from Applied Economics, as Amy has mentioned. The goal of this study is to give us an understanding of the regional investment as a foundation and context for additional ones. We need to know how much we're spending now in order to understand how we'll implement future strategies and what type of funding will be needed for them. This will help us take action and allows the region to develop a common understanding our funds are being spent. This study helps us get there. Next slide, please. The survey results reflect responses by 20 municipalities and Maricopa and Pinal counties, representing over 95% of the region's population. We're very grateful for the assistance and feedback from our counterparts in the cities, towns, and the counties in the course of this study. The study does not include MCSO and criminal justice expenditures. The numbers here are for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020, and include the usage of COVID relief funds to respond to the pandemic emergency when they were deployed within that fiscal year. Next slide, please. I'll be talking first about municipal expenditures on housing programs for persons and households who are experiencing homelessness. Then the totals for services for persons experiencing homelessness, followed by a slide on expenditures for services to low-income persons and households. We will then look at the total expenditures across the region. Next slide, please. This slide shows how almost $50 million in expenditures are apportioned among the different housing programs, including emergency shelter. As we can see, the largest proportion went toward hotel motel, and we're confirming right now if all of the $18 million in this category is from the fiscal year ending June 30th. If it ends up being for the following year, fiscal year, we will update the slide for next month. Next slide, please. The 6.8, almost $7 million total is for services to persons experiencing homelessness. So that includes services include case management and navigation. Now, while the chart size on this presentation is the same size as the prior slide, as you can see, the scale is different. Next slide, please. This almost $70 million includes categories that encompass services to persons experiencing homelessness and other low-income persons, and includes homelessness prevention, which was bolstered last year by pandemic relief funding. For example, utility and rental assistance are important services that prevent people from becoming homeless in the first place. Next slide, please. This slide summarizes the results so far in this study. As you can see, by far the two largest categories are housing programs, including emergency shelter and temporary housing at 40%. That's the $50 million figure that I showed in my first chart, and services to low-income persons and households to prevent homelessness. The services that are targeted specifically for persons experiencing homeless is around 5%. That is that $6.9 million that I showed in my second chart. Now, next slide, please. In conclusion, the expenditure study is a baseline necessary effort in order to plan the next steps in addressing homelessness on a regional basis. Information on these expenditures hasn't been mapped out this way before. As I mentioned, this is the first step in developing this regional understanding of where and how funds are being spent. This shared understanding is an opportunity to understand how the funds received and the expenditures made are allocated, as well as to get data collection and develop this analysis that can highlight the opportunity that are in front of us, especially with COVID relief funding that's coming in. So we're undertaking these important steps to achieve this through this initial effort. And our goal is to make sure that we're making apples to apples comparisons when looking at expenditures and planning future investments. Understanding the federal dollars that come in addition to the federal COVID relief dollars, is also important because they can be a potentially important source of investments to address homelessness in our region and for future decision making. We're working on that, and the tracker tool that Joanna Carr will be presenting right after me will help us identify where and how COVID relief funds allocated to housing and homelessness have been allocated. Mr. Chair and members of the Regional Council, this concludes my presentation. Joanna, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sapna, and thank you for inviting me to present today. I wish to provide a quick overview of what funding is available for housing and homelessness related efforts within the MAG region, from the various stimulus packages received from the federal government. For more details and information, you may access the Arizona Housing Coalition Stimulus Funds Tracker for Housing and Homelessness. This tracker is intended to track all supplementary funding available through the federal stimulus packages for housing and homelessness related purposes. The tracker is continually updated to reflect new bills and allocations. It lists amounts received plus allocated uses across all receiving jurisdictions. And there is a separate tab for Maricopa County. To date, Maricopa County jurisdictions and community organizations have received an approximate total of $545.5 million for housing and homelessness under 3 acts: the CARES Act of March 2020, the U.S. Treasury Emergency Rental Assistance Program of December 2020, and most recently, the American Rescue Plan Act of March of this year. You can find the tracker on the Arizona Housing Coalition website, and the link is on the slide here. This tracker has also been added to today's meeting materials on MAG's website. Next slide, please. On the screen, you'll be able to see a breakdown of the American Rescue Plan Act for housing and homelessness. Arizona will be receiving a total of $602 million in American Rescue Plan Act dollars for this sector. Most is going to the state for administration. The 2 funding streams that are going to be allocated to local jurisdictions and public housing authorities are the Homeless Assistance and Supportive Services Fund, HASSP, also known as ARP Home Funds, and the Emergency Housing Choice Voucher Program, adding $100 million in additional vouchers to Arizona. Next slide, please. The HASSP funds have been allocated using the home formula, and receiving jurisdictions within Maricopa County are the county itself, the city of Phoenix, and the city of Mesa, a total of $43 million. These funds are now allocated, and the amounts on screen are the official allocated dollar amount. HASSP funds must be expended by September of 2025. The Housing Choice Voucher Program will be allocated to the housing authorities, and we are awaiting that update on which and the dollar amount allocations. This will be added to the tracker. The Housing Choice Voucher Program provides funding for a 5-year period. Next slide, please. I wish to provide a quick overview of eligible spending activity under the HASSP. These funds can be used broadly for tenant-based rental assistance, the development of affordable housing, support services, and the acquisition and development of non-congregate shelter, which can also be converted into permanent supportive housing. There are a couple of documents in the meeting packet and materials that give more detail, one from the Corporation for Supportive Housing and another from the National Low Income Coalition on Housing. What we really have in front of us, sorry, next slide, please, is the opportunity to bring more units online. We know we cannot end homelessness until we have more units of accessible and affordable housing. These funds really provide the opportunity for capital acquisition and support services. Using hotels for non-congregate sheltering and permanent housing is a strategy that is encouraged by HUD under the American Rescue Plan Act. Partnering with housing authorities to explore landlord incentive programs is also recommended, since vouchers are underutilized already, and we do need to ensure we have enough landlords to meet the demand of new and existing vouchers. Unspent CARES Act dollars also provide an opportunity for municipalities to braid funding to maximize effectiveness of all available stimulus funding. Understanding the allowable uses of funds and understanding what funds are available in the region should be helpful for strategically combining resources to address housing and homelessness. We hope the stimulus funds tracker and the listed available guidance in the tracker will be helpful in this effort. Next slide, please. This concludes my part of the presentation, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. No, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the council. We do appreciate this time. We'd be happy to take any questions or comments that you might have. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Amy, I do have a question, and I don't know who can answer it, if anybody can. I had the opportunity, I was told about a news documentary that was done from a reporter in Seattle, and the name of the documentary is called Seattle is Dying. And I would encourage everybody, write that down, take the time, look it up on YouTube, watch it, listen to it. But the thing that they were talking about, and I believe it's a huge issue that we have here in the Valley, and I think a lot of our homelessness is caused, if not by a byproduct of drug usage. I think a huge part of that, and I think most people, being honest, would agree with that. In this article, one of the things they talked about was the city being able to use methadone and setting up areas where they could help get people off of their habits of the opiate drugs and literally help them get their lives back together. I'll make a statement that'll probably get me in trouble, but I guess that's what I do. I think we have a much larger drug problem here than we do a homeless problem. And I think we have to address the homeless issue. There's no doubt about it. But I think if we neglect to take care of the drug issue, I don't think we're ever going to solve this homeless problem. And so I would love to figure out a way that we could incorporate something similar to what this news article represents, the opioid, methadone, basically, the use of that. And I certainly would hope that we could get some conversation on it and get some people in the know I think we have to start really honestly being honest about this and facing the issue. I certainly welcome any feedback from anyone.
Mr. Chair, it's Ken Weiss.
Go ahead.
So I watched the same thing that you did, and it was amazing when you look at when we, as a society and as a city, and again, this might get me in trouble too, so I'll stand with you on this one. When we stop, in my opinion, when we stop allowing our residents to poison themselves and say that it's okay with drugs, that they're free to do what they want, when clearly the decisions that they're making are not only detrimental to them, but to society as a whole. And I think that's what you're seeing in Seattle. When you look at some of the success stories that have happened back east with some nonprofit organizations, there has been some success stories. And I think we need to look at it with a different view than what we're looking at it right now. And I would agree. I would think that the majority of the homeless population, Amy, and you can feel free to jump in if I'm incorrect, are either dealing with mental health issues or addiction issues. And while we look at throwing funds at the homeless issues, I think in a lot of ways we are neglecting to throw money at the root causes of what's happening. I look at some of the information that was put forth by the Homeless Research Institute at their point in time study in 2018. And it's eye-opening when you look at the percentage of Native Americans that are homeless, not only sheltered, but unsheltered. And when you look at the amount of alcohol abuse and drug abuse in tribal locations, I can't help but think that that has a direct impact on the percentage of Native Americans that are homeless. So while we look at the study and we go forward up until August, I would encourage everyone not only to look at the video that you're talking about, but take a look at the Homeless Research Institute point in time study of 2018, which is eye-opening not only from the Phoenix region, Mr. Chair, but across the nation.
Thanks, Ken.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
it's Jenny Dickey. Hi. I haven't seen the video, but I just wanted to mention, and I'm not asking for any response necessarily, but we had a zoning issue come up for a detox, and the outcry is quite overwhelming. Just to set up zoning, not even for an actual project, which there is one in the air, but so that kind of goes to some of the difficulty in dealing with everything as a whole, complaints or worries about group homes and things like that that make it difficult sometimes to meet these things head on.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Yes, this is Mike Levault. I'm going to weigh in here, and I'm going to agree with everything that you and Mayor Weiss said. Over the past 18 months or so, I've spent almost 100 hours and made dozens of trips into homeless encampments down in the Agua Fria River. And I can tell you that I took a team down, as I said, a couple of dozen times. And part of that team was an organization called Community Bridges. We offered every homeless person that we encountered an opportunity to go into a detox program and or a shelter. And I can tell you that almost all of them refused. And so what I would say, and by the way, that movie, Seattle is Dying, that's been out there for a long time. I watched it last year at some point. And I'm going to make a prediction here. Unless we can get our arms around this homeless problem here in the Valley, we're going to witness I predict a continuing spike in the number of homeless on the street. The fact that this state just legalized recreational marijuana is not going to help our cause here. And I'll make a flat statement that is probably going to get me in trouble. Until we have the necessary leverage to force these people into detox programs or mental health facilities, we're never going to make a dent in this problem. You're right when you say the drug problem is kind of a great contributing factor here. What I've seen locally in terms of statistics track with what we're seeing nationally, roughly 80% of the people on the street are drug addicted and or alcoholics. And probably around half of them are seriously mentally ill and either off their medication or self-medicating with meth and or heroin. So if we really want to make a dent in this problem, I think we have to recognize what the root cause is for many of these people on the street. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Any other comment?
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead,
Mayor
sir.
Riggs here. I just want to go on record as saying I absolutely agree with you that drugs is the #1 cause of homelessness here in Arizona. I've seen it being in and around the Phoenix area, and I absolutely agree with you. Until we deal with our drug problem, we're never going to get rid of homelessness.
President Burnett here.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, this is President Burnett with Formidalia. I echo almost every one's comments regarding homelessness and substance abuse. Yeah, if we can work with, of course, the tribes in the area, also the team, the individuals that spoke, and the Phoenix Indian Center, I think we can help fight this issue. But we've been fighting this forever here on tribal land. So some of our tribal people are on the streets as we all speak. So anyway, we can help. I'm here, been participating in MAG for what, 6 years now since I've been back. So. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is Les Peterson. This was the subject that I was driving at in the executive committee meeting of a week ago. And that is, what are the causes of homelessness as opposed to dealing with the symptoms? And I think what it says to me is we need programs in both areas. You know, we can't give up on either one. And so I'm agreeing with all of the comments that have been made on this. So thank you, sir.
Thank you. I mean, obviously we got a lot more people out there that could speak. But I guess what I would ask is if we have some sort of consensus about trying to make this one of the priorities and literally start looking at this because it's a two-pronged approach. We have to deal with them both at the same time. You can't do one or the other. It's, you know, one would certainly make things better, but both of them at the same time, I think, will make things a lot better. So if the committee's okay with that, I just ask if we have a consensus to give Meg the direction to go ahead and try to figure out what we can do as an organization to start dealing with you know, with some of these drug addictions and what it would take to set up, you know, a clinic or individual cities clinics, or give us some information so at least we know how to respond.
This is Chip Wilson from Apache Junction. And also, I would suggest to look at some of the faith-based groups. They have been working with this as well. And, you know, it's something that, yes, we do have a problem with, I'll say, the drugs or the mental health, but some of the people in the faith-based groups can assist in this. We have one organization out here that's trying to teach people to actually be working in the food industry. And one of the things that they work with them is getting them away from the drugs completely before they can even start into the training of this. And I think this is something that, you know, we can also look to as for them for some assistance.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Go ahead.
Great. Thank you so much. Really do appreciate all of the comments from the council. Absolutely. There are many reasons why people might experience the loss of their home, but substance abuse is very much a concern. It's a concern that I hear very strongly among members of this council, as well as the providers who are working with people who are living out on the streets right now. And so we are very focused on the substance use issues as part of the strategies, as well as part of the funding analysis. So when we're looking at the cost of housing, for example, we're also looking at those supportive services, which are so absolutely critical to helping people maintain their housing. And so that will be factored into both the portfolio as well as the regional funding targets and the funding scenarios that will be brought forward to you next month. We'll absolutely make sure that we're highlighting the opportunities to further the work in addressing substance use and mental health treatment. We understand that those are absolutely key concerns. I did want to highlight for you as well, and I noticed the comments in the chat too. We did have a forum with faith leaders, and so they have absolutely been a critical component of this work. And we are continuing to work with them then to really understand how we can best utilize their circles of influence, their talents, their expertise in this space. The faith community has been called kind of the sleeping giant. You know, it's a tremendous source of assistance for people when they are in need, and we very much want to leverage their expertise and their efforts and be able to work with them to address this issue. Thank you very much for the recommendation of Table of Grace. We'll absolutely be reaching out to them and appreciate that recommendation. So when we come to you next month, we'll be featuring the work of the portfolio, which does include a focus on substance use, because we do agree that's absolutely a critical issue and one of the many reasons why people might experience homelessness, including lack of access to affordable housing, not being able to get a job, and other factors that really come into play. So it's important to address this issue in a holistic way, as well as looking at those root causes. I was in a meeting earlier today and someone referenced that it's not enough to look at how much Tylenol we have. We need to look at why that person has a headache. And so it's not enough to treat the symptoms of homelessness. We need to get down to the root cause. And there are a
Amy,
number of those that are being brought to bear. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Amy, it's Ken Weiss.
Yes, sir.
So, Amy, I would look at, and one of the slides that was toward the end of your presentation, and I don't want you to go all the way back. It was an excellent, pleasant presentation, but there was a comment on focusing on people of color. And I will tell you that when I think about homelessness and I think about the resources that are out there for people, for me, homelessness is always about the most critical need at that moment. And I'll give you an example. If I have a mom who is got 2 kids and she is homeless, she's been kicked out of her home due to an abusive relationship, she's got other issues that are concerning that. My goal, my hope as the mayor of a city would be to make sure that that woman and her kids were prioritized in the process to get them the needs, to get them the services and the resources that they needed, whether it was immediate housing, whether it was food for her kids, making sure that their education continued, that those things impacted them as positively as possible, as opposed to a person who is single on the street, who may choose to be single or through other mitigating circumstances has gotten there. So I want to make sure when we talk about homeless resources, we're talking about the needs of the people who are requiring those services. And we're not basing it on some formula from studies that were done with other organizations, because I will tell you that in Avondale, I think I've told this story, Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to take too long. My daughter Delaney, when she was in high school, she had a girl that would come home with her every 2 months, and she would spend 2 or 3 days with us, and she would have dinner, she would sleep at our house, and she would drive back to school. And I said to my daughter after like the second time, you got to tell me what's going on here. And she said, Dad, her father's an alcoholic and the mother abandoned the family. And every 2 months, her father quits drinking, but it only lasts for a month or 2. And he never wants her to see him that way. So he gives her the keys to his truck, and she goes and she sleeps in the Walmart parking lot in her dad's truck. For all intents and purposes, that girl is homeless for a week or 2 weeks out of every month. Mm-hmm. I want to prioritize resources for that 17-year-old girl who is sleeping in the Walmart parking lot over someone who chooses for decisions that they've made to be homeless on the street. And that may sound harsh and that may sound cruel, but honestly, I think when homeless services, it has to be based on priority and need over anything else.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Chairman and members of the council, thank you, Mayor Weiss. I am sorry to hear about your daughter's friend. Unfortunately, that happens all too often in our region, and we absolutely need to provide resources to people when they do really need it the most. We do have a coordinated entry system, which helps to prioritize people who are most in need. And we are looking at an extensive effort to enhance that system, because we do understand that there are opportunities that really need to be put into place to improve that system, to make sure that we are working with people right when they need that help in the best way possible. And in terms of people choosing to be homeless, we are also focused on low barrier shelters. We understand that at times that can be a very tempered choice as to whether or not they enter treatment or shelter or housing opportunities. So, for example, are they able to enter in with their partner, their spouse? Are they able to bring their pets with them? Are they able to bring their belongings? So there are a lot of reasons sometimes why somebody might make what seems like an illogical choice not to access shelter and services. And so we want to make sure of 2 things. One, to your point, to make sure that we're absolutely helping people who need it the most. We have to be doing that. And then 2, that we're able to meet people where they are and be able to eliminate any barriers that they might have to getting back on their feet. And there are a number of different ways that can be done. And we're committed to looking and exploring all of those different opportunities.
Amy, thank you for understanding what I was trying to say.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman, this is Kathy Carlett. Can I make one quick statement? Amy, thank you for all the work that you've put into this so far. I would like to request that we have the ability to take a look at those funding scenarios prior to us coming to the next MAG meeting. We could have those in advance. Absolutely. I think it's going to give us time to really analyze what's going to be best and more appropriate for each city.
Mr. Chairman, Mayor Kala, and members of the council absolutely wholeheartedly agree. That helps us to be able to offer that preview so we get your feedback. We do have a meeting that we've advertised to your staff already on May 10th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We do have some of your city staff coming. More are certainly welcome. And so we will be able to offer those draft funding targets as well as the scenarios. And we'd be happy to send that out as well by email so that everyone can have a chance to really take a look at those. We understand this is a critical moment in time, and we need to be able to work together in absolutely the best way possible. And so we're committed to providing that information up front. And that was purposefully scheduled for May 10th before it even goes to management committee. So we can make sure that we're making any adjustments that might be needed to make sure that when something comes before you, we've had the benefit of your perspective as that work is being developed. Also, we're meeting this afternoon with the human services directors from your cities, towns, and counties to preview the projected numbers of additional shelter beds and housing units that might be needed. And so we've conducted that analysis. The Solari crisis in human services has been phenomenal, as has the Corporation for Supportive Housing. So they'll be offering the results of their analysis, and we'll be looking to input from your staff in terms of what those projections are right now and localized. Harkening back to Mayor Weiss's earlier point, we've been basing all of this work on local data. And so being able to work with Solari Crisis and Human Services has been critical to that, because we want to make sure that we're making local decisions with local data. And we're getting local feedback in terms of what those results are. So thank you for that. We do want to highlight that opportunity, and we'd be thrilled to have any feedback that you might have throughout the process.
Thanks very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor Wires.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I'm also looking forward to, with Mayor Carlott, to getting those targets. The Phoenix City Council met yesterday to discuss our American Rescue Plan programs, and then we'll have another meeting on May 18th. We've had strong support from the council for participating in regional programs, but the earlier we can make those budget decisions, that helps us, because we are eager to get this money out and working. I watched the national news last night on NBC, and they highlighted a rise in housing prices all across the country. But I am sure you all are familiar with which region they mentioned as number one in those increases. 17.5% for us is the number they had. I have seen numbers that vary, but sometimes even higher. And I think most of the people who live in our community did not get a 17.5% raise last year. So I'm afraid this problem is going to get even more complicated. I would welcome if MAG could look again at eviction data across the county, because I think that is helpful to see where it is happening. But it is in every corner of our county that is a challenge. And with these numbers and just the demand to live in this wonderful community, that may get even worse. I wanted to say, I think there's so many different stories behind how people end up with these challenges. But caseworkers, to me, are something I want to continue to emphasize as just getting that individual help to get people into the right programs to address their issues. The help needed for the young woman in Avondale and her family is probably very different from some of the people facing different challenges, but caseworkers can help with that as well. I think Mayor Weiss was going in this direction, but I would welcome goals focused on certain populations, including children and families, to try to say, we want to really see how we're doing in those areas and help our kids. And I think that's very data driven. We know if you can help young people or families get out of homelessness, huge benefits when you help a family get out of there. So that, I think, is consistent with our values as a region. I'm glad we're focusing first on this particular set of resources, but I would welcome an update on what everyone is doing on behavioral health and if there's coordination in that area. I know there are some, I think Mesa has a very cool behavioral health program from which we have learned, and Tempe is doing some things, but I bet there's things all over the valley that I would benefit from knowing from. So it would be good to know those success stories. And I would personally welcome an update on different pots of money, including the opioid settlement and how that's being used in this community, or if there's opportunities for us all to provide input on those various resources and how do we make sure there are solutions for people who are facing addiction. But thank you all for bringing up such great points today.
And I just actually want to thank Kate for all her effort in trying to bridge the efforts that people are doing. You've been doing a great job, Kate. Thank you. Anyone
Mr.
else?
Chair?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, this is Mayor Giles from Mesa. I just want to express my appreciation to everyone that has spoken so far on this topic. When I became mayor 6 years ago, I remember saying homelessness is an issue in Mesa, Arizona. And I started changing the way I would frame that, you know, a few years later. And I think regionally, homelessness is not an issue. Homelessness is the issue. And I think, and so I appreciate the realization that I've seen reflected in a lot of the comments that have been shared today. I agree with the concern about the root cause of the problem. I think we've got a wonderful opportunity, a once in a generation opportunity with the American Rescue Plan funds that are coming to the region for us to, it coincides nicely with our commitment and our preparation to attack this problem as a region. So thank you to Amy, thank you to MAG staff that has worked diligently on this for the last several months. I look forward to next month's meeting. I look forward to the funding plans and the implementation plans that are to follow. And again, just want to express my appreciation as a regional partner for the commitment that I sense from this body to be serious about this.
Thanks, John. Anyone else?
Chair Wires, Bridget Peterson. Thanks for all the comments that have been made today. As one of the newest people to come to this board, it has concerned me a bit as to how fast I feel we're moving on this topic, and hearing the comments that have been brought up today about mental health and the drug and opioid situation. And I haven't even had an opportunity to bring this to my council yet because I've only been on this committee for 3 months now at this point. And this is probably the fastest that I've ever seen any topic move anywhere when government is involved. And so I've been really hesitant to speak up because I know that it's an issue, and I'm one of the last ones to come into this discussion. I'm concerned that we're moving very fast. And I think that some great points were made today that we really need to take into consideration. And we have an issue with, from the top down here in the state, with behavioral health, with people being released out of the Arizona State Hospital that shouldn't be released. I just had a situation with a group home in my community that needs to be addressed. We have all of those issues that are, I think, contributing to everything that we're talking about here today. And I just want to make sure that we're not moving too fast. And like someone said in the beginning, is throwing money at the problem that we're not really sure what the root issues are and how to address and handle those. So I'm asking that everybody, take a breath and let's look at it fully and completely before we make too many moves forward. And some of us need opportunities to be able to take this back to our council to see how much of an obligation my town would be willing to make in this situation too. So just wanted to share my thoughts. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, hearing no one else, there is no action on this item today. It's for information discussion only. So with that, if we could go ahead and move on to item 6.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of Regional Council. As you know, MEG is currently in the process of developing the fiscal year 2022 and 23 MEG Biennial Unified Planning Work Program and Budget. Throughout this process, we've presented updates on the incremental basis for your review and discussion since January. This month's presentation is on the draft budget development to date, which is about 70% complete and has been included in the agenda packets for further review. Throughout this month, the MEG Fiscal Services staff has been working to finalize the remaining 30% of the budget, including the total budgeted personnel costs and the carry forwards. For this month, MEG is recommending a proposed salary increase of 3.5% to be included for both fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23. That any increases to individual MEG salaries will be performance-based. Retaining key staff at MEG is essential to continuing quality level work. Accordingly, MEG staff receives an annual performance evaluation every June, and based on their performance for the year may receive a salary increase if one is included in the budget. MEG is also proposing the addition of 5 new positions during the period of fiscal year 22 through 23. The first position is an ITS communications specialist, which is needed to support the regional community network and MAG member agencies with IT and ITS related tasks, including traffic camera management systems, RCN, network maintenance and support, fiber optic troubleshooting and maintenance, and various ITS related support projects, in addition to helping with the IT group, help desk and other support tasks. The second position is a software engineer 1-2, which is needed to help the MAG IT development team address their backlog of development tasks and provide cross-training and backup support opportunities by creating software development plans and relational database designs, develop, test, implement, and support the existing software and database solutions at MAG, and assist in assessing end user software development and database needs by gathering requirements and creating documentation. The third position is the GIS analyst 1 or 2, and it's needed to support the regional analytics division and projects under the partnership with Read On Arizona, Arizona Department of Education, and the SunCloud project. Tasks include the development and maintenance of GIS and other databases, including research and collection of data sets. Additionally, this position will conduct spatial analysis, develop maps, and presentations. The fourth position is a transportation engineer 1, which is needed to support proposed program activities and contribute to all required tasks under transportation data program to better assist MAG RTP goals and fulfill FHWA requirements on transportation data. Anticipated duties will include project management, communications, data analysis, data collection and assistance, and fulfillment of data requests. And the fifth and final position is the transportation analyst 1, which is needed to support the ongoing emergency technologies field pilots and program region efforts. This position will also support the new innovative travel survey program with duties to include assistance in travel survey design, travel data collection, and data processing, the analysis and management of travel and traffic data sets. Other duties include perform software development, transportation models, application and maintenance, and preparation of technical reports and project management. This proposal, along with any direction received today, will be included in the complete draft detailed budget to be presented for approval during next month committee meetings, along with input received from the intermodal planning group meeting, which was on April 15th. This item is on the agenda today for information and discussion, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Not hearing any questions. Any questions? I guess you did a good job, Amy.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no questions for Amy. Amy, were you finished?
That was the end of the presentation and updates. Thank you.
All right, very good. There's no action needed on this item today, so we'll move on to item number 7. Appointment of members nominating committee. I'd like to announce that I appoint the following members to serve. Mayor Jenny Dickey, Supervisor Clint Hickman, Mayor Michael Levault, Mayor Bridget Peterson, and my old friend Mayor Eric Osborne. He will serve as the chair of the committee, and I want to thank all of you for agreeing to serve. A memo will be sent out following this meeting requesting nominations for MAG officers and members of the executive committee, and that'll also have the details on the process. The regional council will vote on the executive committee members in June. We have any questions from the membership? Okay, hearing none. Item number 8, agenda number 8 is an update on the development of the new regional transportation, MAG transportation plan. Audra Kester Thomas, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Wires, members of Regional Council. Pleased to be with you here today to give you an update on the latest developments of the Regional Transportation Plan. Next slide. Our focus today will be on the recently completed transportation survey amongst likely voters in Maricopa County. I'm joined today by lead researcher and project manager, Kathy DeBoer from West Group, who can answer any detailed questions about the methodology or research itself. After we go through the results of the survey, it was included as part of your agenda packet for today. I will end and conclude with the next steps associated with the development of the regional transportation plan, specifically on the scenario planning work that is underway, as well as our public engagement work next month. Next slide. As directed by our policymakers, MAG went out to survey likely voters in Maricopa County to better understand transportation priorities, receive reflections on tax duration and rate, as well as better understand constituents' opinions and perspectives about financial security to determine whether or not the November 2022 planned election is still the right date. It's completed amongst 132 likely voters and statistically valid at a plus or minus 3% margin of error. It was a mixed mode survey using landline, cell phones, as well as an online panel to ensure that we received a representative demographic sample of Maricopa County. Next slide. So first, we'll start off reporting our transportation priorities. Next slide. We initially asked at the top of the survey for reflections on the satisfaction level of our transportation system. And what you'll see here, as well as with the remaining research to date, just a lot of consistency with the values mapping work that we conducted 2 years ago. There is a high degree of satisfaction with our transportation system, notably with our freeway and roadway and grid system, but to a lesser degree transit. And you'll see this is a message carried throughout the survey results. Next slide. We then asked an open-ended question: what was the most important transportation improvement needed in the region? You'll see collectively the elements of transit are the top of that list. Highways and freeways, streets, as well as safety and active transportation round out our list. Next slide. We then isolate here the top deliberate mention of each of these categories. Light rail at the top of the list with a specific expansion as a priority. Additional lanes, maintenance of the infrastructure we've already made, bus and safety also included in this list. I will note that this totals just over 100%. While we asked for the top mention, the most important priority, many individuals, when they answered that, offered a couple of items. We collected all of that data as part of this work, and that's why you see a total of over 100%. Next slide. We then came back and had 8 deliberate categories that we wanted respondents to rate in terms of level of priority on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being a very high priority. And what you'll see here is all 8 were determined to be high priorities of those who responded to the survey. But notably at the top of this list is preparation for future technology and innovation. This goes to the feedback we've received from you all along, that preparation for emerging technology and an innovative future needs to find space in our regional transportation plan, and it supports a flexible investment strategy for which we have discussed. Also wanted to mention that 80% of individuals who did take this survey noted at least one element of transit as a high priority. Next slide. We then asked for reflections on tax rate and duration. Next slide. What we see here is a high degree of support for continuation of the half cent. It's important to note that there were no details associated with what would be delivered, what would be funded, what could ultimately be invested in, simply reflections on whether or not people supported a continuation or an expansion of a sales tax to support transportation. Overall, there's more support than not, and in fact, only 8% of individuals are opposed to both a tax extension or an increase. Notably amongst those 8% are individuals who are principally against or usually in opposition of taxes, not necessarily specifically for this transportation tax. What this tells us is we have a lot of room for discussion with constituents, that they see transportation as a priority, look forward as we develop and formalize a plan to have that conversation with constituents. Next slide. We then came back, noted that the current half-cent sales tax would not be sufficient to meet current and future needs in transportation, especially with the high pace of growth that we're experiencing in this region, and then asked whether or not that would change their opinion. And what you see here is it does. It provides additional information to garner more support for an increase in the tax. It also further reinforces those who are already supportive of increasing the tax. Next slide. We then asked whether or not a continuation of a regionally focused portfolio, as has been hallmark of Propositions 300 and 400, especially if those regional investments were not necessarily in their local community, whether or not that would change their level of support. And what we saw was just a tremendous amount of support for a continuation in regionally focused investments. Voters are motivated by the greater good. They recognize one investment and improvement in the system helps and improves the entire system. And so this really reinforces that regional strategy. Next slide. We asked about tax duration. You'll see an overwhelming amount of support for that 20-year portfolio. But again, even without an indication of what could or should be funded, 1 in 5 indicated support actually for a permanent sales tax for transportation. Next slide. We then asked for reflections on personal economic security in the future to determine whether or not the November 2022 election date was still the appropriate time to go to voters. Next slide. And what we were really surprised to see is a tremendous amount of reflection, positive reflection on current economic situation. When asked, to over 65% or approximately 65% of individuals reflected that their current economic or financial situation was either in excellent shape or good shape, with another 75% or so of individuals indicating they believed that over the next year or two, their financial position to either be the same or even improve. Ultimately, the reflections from this analysis tell us that economic insecurity does not necessarily change our direction for a November 2022 election. Next slide. So some survey conclusions. Next slide. A research team looked really deep into the data to better understand what motivated respondents. And what you'll see here is a profile of those who support an increase in the tax. These items that are bolded are those that are the biggest drivers of this individual group of individuals. And what you'll see here, top of the list, these are individuals who support funds used for regional system investments, even if those investments are outside their community. These are individuals who believe improvements are needed and recognize an increase in tax would be necessary to deliver those improvements. These are also individuals who consider transit investments as a high priority. To a little bit lesser degree, these are individuals who are more liberal than conservative and more optimistic about their future financial position. Next slide. Some additional conclusions from the research. Voters are very much focused on the broad topics, but not necessarily the specifics associated with them. Additionally, folks who indicated one element of transit as a high priority often indicated all elements of transit as a high priority. Voters are focused on the issues, not their demographics. Our research team was surprised to learn there were not any distinguishing characteristics that determined an outcome. There was a lot of consistency across the region and sub-region, both in terms of transportation priorities as well as level of support for the tax. There is an expectation and high degree support of a multimodal investment portfolio as part of this initiative and a future transportation investment for the region. And again, a high level of support for regional investments. Next slide. I will do a small report now on where we stand at the RTP development process. Next slide. Reorient you here to our performance-based evaluation process. We are now towards the end and at the exciting part. MAG has completed development of 4 scenarios, 2 different philosophies at 2 different tax rates, assumption of a continuation of a ½ cent, as well as 2 scenarios that demonstrate what we could deliver if we increase the tax up to 1 cent. It's the same authority that all other counties in Arizona have. We believe these are intended to be decision support tools to better illustrate what we can or cannot deliver with these financial conditions. It's important to remember our RTP needs to be fiscally constrained, and this part of the process is to help inform the decision ultimately of a consensus portfolio of projects and programs. It is only a starting point, and over the course of the next weeks, we'll be working with you to identify, and through the Transportation Policy Committee specifically, what that final group of high capacity projects as well as programmatic investments is comprised of. Next slide. Our intention is to deliver a consensus by the summertime so that we can move into our federally required air quality conformity process. It takes about 5 months to complete before delivering that final plan for your consideration and adoption at the end of the year. Next slide. As part of this, we also are going out to public and getting their feedback. We know how important this will be as part of some tough decisions ahead. We're focused in the middle part of next month using several virtual events and opportunities to engage with constituents to better understand their reflections and pulling that information back to you to help you make the decisions that we have ahead. Chairman Weiss, that completes my presentation. Both Kathy DeBoer and I are here to answer any questions.
All right, good job. Questions? Any questions? Okay, Audrey, good job, I guess. No questions on that. That does finish up item number 8, correct? Okay, then we'll move on to item number 9, legislative update, MAG policy, government relations. Nathan, are you back this week?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am. I apologize. There's construction activity outside, so I'll try to get through this at a good clip. Next slide, please. So these are some of the items I'm going to cover today, more as a federal update, talking about recent grant processes, the RAISE grant that's been offered up now, the American Jobs Plan, which is the Biden infrastructure proposal, as well as the GOP infrastructure proposal, and closing out with Census 2020. So next slide, please. I'm sorry, previous slide. Okay, yep. Thanks. So just on the recent grant process, community project funding, also known as earmarks, we've been working with congressional offices on those applications that have gone in. We've provided letters of support with some of those project applications. We've been doing some verification as to whether or not projects are in the TIP. So that process is ongoing and going well. Similarly, there's a surface transportation reauthorization earmark process as well going on simultaneously. I know it's causing a little bit of confusion, but we're getting through it together. So this is similar to the community project funding, only focused on the more long midterm transportation reauthorization. So similarly, MAG has been verifying projects, clarifying issues with House offices, and of course, offering letters of support and verifying TIP status. Next slide, please. This is the RAISE grant that I mentioned. So this is formerly the BUILD grant, and before that it was the TIGER grant going back to 2009. That notification has been released, showing $1 billion for federal fiscal year 2021. You can see the deadline to submit is July 12th, 2021. More information is included in the link, so you can find all about it there. Next slide, please. So the American Jobs Plan, the Biden infrastructure proposal, obviously taking up a lot of conversation and space federally. So this is a $2.3 trillion proposal, really talking about expanded notions or considerations of infrastructure. You can see on this list more traditional forms of infrastructure are listed, transportation, for instance, but also expanding that to issues like affordable housing. On affordable housing, we're seeing $214 billion being proposed to build, preserve, and retrofit more than 2 million homes and commercial buildings to address the affordable housing crisis. Also building and rehabilitating more than 500,000 homes for low and middle income buyers, and also address longstanding public housing capital needs. So a lot going on with the affordable housing component of the jobs plan. Next slide, please. This is the transportation part. You can see the modes broken out there. In highways, there's been an emphasis to fix it first and or modernize. That is raising some concerns with us as a fast-growing state, fast-growing region, where those dollars might be allocated. So we continue to message that to our congressional offices and associations. There's been an emphasis placed on electric vehicles, establishing grant and incentive programs for state and local governments and the private sector to build a network of 500,000 electric vehicle chargers nationwide by 2030. Public transit, $85 billion to modernize the existing transit system. Next slide, please. And I don't want to overlook what's been getting some media attention of late. This is regarding Amtrak. The infrastructure proposal is calling on Congress to invest $80 billion to address Amtrak's repair backlog. Emphasis is on modernizing the high traffic Northeast corridor, also improving existing corridors and connecting new city pairs. As you can see in this map, showing new routes from Las Vegas to Los Angeles, as well as Phoenix to Los Angeles, a lot of other routes being proposed throughout the country. We'll continue to monitor this. This has been interesting as we hear from the Eno Transportation Center in DC and their analysts as to how far that funding might go. So we'll keep track of that conversation. And next slide, please. The last slide, just noting, I'm sorry, before we get to the end, there is a GOP infrastructure proposal on the table. Probably a bit more traditional concept notions of infrastructure, $568 billion. Our understanding, a lot of this would be going through somewhat the typical and existing formula methodologies. So the GOP proposal, the president's proposal, obviously there's a conversation to be had here, a lot of negotiation going on behind the scenes. So we'll continue to monitor these issues. And as promised, next slide, please, the last slide, Census 2020. Yesterday, we saw the announcement of Census 2020 data for reapportionment. There's a bit of a surprise, as you all are aware. Arizona did not pick up a new House seat, missing that by about 80,000 residents. There's a lot more information to come later this year to better understand what's going into these numbers, who might have been overlooked in the counts. So we'll continue to monitor that and bring back at a later date. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm available for any questions.
Okay, Nathan, thank you. Any questions for Nathan? Nathan, there was one thing, I don't know which slide it was. It was like the first or second slide that you had. I don't know if you can flip back there for me real quick. Okay, go ahead and
go forward. Yeah.
Okay, hold it right there for a second. So it says maximum award 25 million and no more than 100 million to a single state, right?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I was just trying to figure out the numbers here. 50 states. Okay, so no one's going to get $100 million in a single state, I guess, is really what I was trying to figure out.
Mr. Chairman, that's typically unlikely in these grant processes.
Okay.
You're correct.
Yeah, when I first seen that, I'm thinking, well, that would be just totally crazy. Okay, all right. Well, that was the only question I had, and it went through it kind of quick. So there's no one else needing to ask any questions. This item was for information discussion also only. Do we have any requests by the regional council for any items on a future agenda? Hearing none. Are there any comments or announcements from the membership? Okay, if there's nothing else, Nathan, good job. I thank everyone for their discussion on the homeless and the drug addiction. I think we might get some good things because of that. With that, business is now concluded. This meeting is adjourned. I hope you all have a great day.